Right, let's make a start. It's 7 o'clock. Sally and Imogen, can we make a start, please? Yes, thank you. All right, welcome everyone to the Standards Committee. Councillor Mulvin is unable to be here tonight, so as Vice Chair, I'll be chairing this evening. Do we have any apologies?
Apologies from Morag, Malvern and Jackie Jagger, Chair.
Okay, any other apologies anyone's aware of? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to the minutes then of the last meeting. Are we happy that those are a correct record? Can I see a show of hands? Yeah, that's everyone, I think. All right, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No? Okay, and do we have any public member or parish town council questions?
None of any of those types of questions, Chair.
Thank you. So let's move on to our first item of business this evening then, which is the Councillor Code of Conduct complaints. So I think we've got one new complaint since the last meeting, couple that are outside timescales. Andrew, do you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, because this is the standard report that I'm sure you're used to by now as members of the Standards Committee. So yes, as the Chair says, just one new complaint, WBC 18, since you met on the 29th of January. Just to give you an update on the two reds, or the two that are outside of timescales, these are on page 14. So if I start with WBC 7 first, I'm pleased to report that that investigation was concluded last week and a consultation took place with the independent person, and the finding from the investigation was that there was no breach. So that was concluded on the 8th of March. And then WBC 8, which is the other one that came in some time ago now. We haven't quite concluded that yet, but that is imminent in terms of reaching a conclusion on that. So not too far away in terms of WBC 8. And the two at the beginning, WBC 18 and 17, they're obviously very recent. They're going through the process at the moment in terms of the initial assessment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, open up to questions or comments. Sally?
Are 17 and 18 referencing the same incident or different ones that coincidentally have the same description?
They're relating to the same type of alleged breach, but they're two separate incidents.
Okay, any other comments or questions from members? No? Okay, thank you for that, Andrew. So we'll move on. So we've got the next two items. We've got the LGA Debate Not Hate campaign. We've also got the Jo Cox Civility Commission report. And if members are happy, I'd like to take the discussion part of these together because they're so obviously linked. So you'll remember from the last meeting that we felt the survey hadn't reached enough people. So that's gone out again. We've got a lot more responses now, which is good. Then we've got the Jo Cox report as well. Some really quite horrific examples of abuse in there, quite difficult reading at times. Andrew, did you want to introduce both of these items and then we'll move into the discussion?
Just very, very briefly. So the first one, Debate Not Hate. I guess having looked at the detailed feedback, the headline that sort of comes out very strongly in terms of what action members would like to see. Two things. One is guidance, which clearly we'll do when we've got an opportunity with the councillors who will be elected on the 2nd of May to build that in as part of the induction process. And the second point on that Debate Not Hate campaign is around training. And again, we'll build that into the member training programme for 24-25. And just in terms of the Jo Cox Civility Commission report, really just to refer members to page 21 and just to bring out the three specific recommendations that the report makes to local government. Having said that, obviously there's lots of other stakeholders and lots of other bodies that are referenced in that report. But I think in terms of what the Borough Council can do, page 21 gives you a sort of steer in terms of the three things that the report is focusing local government on. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we obviously want to focus on what actions we would propose, but are there any actual questions on any of it, first of all, before we get into that? I just had one quick one, which was whether in the councillor survey, whether there was any disproportionate impact that was noticeable on certain sort of sectors, so women or minority ethnic councillors, or any patterns in that regard?
There was nothing, Chair, that I spotted in terms of any particular patterns arising.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to actions arising. I see Sally's got a list, and thank you, Sally, for circulating some information earlier as well. That was really useful. Sally, do you want to go ahead?
Try not to bore people. So thank you very much for looking at these. I think there is more than we can do other than just the 3 points that are specifically targeted at local, this level of unitary authority. But there are a couple of other things I really want to call out. Part of this is, in fact, Imogen's also on it. I'm on the NALC Women's Support Group for women councillors at local, and I think unitary authority level as well. It is really, could well be, but it is really clear that a women's network of some kind of support group is hugely beneficial and is being cried out for around the country. The second point is you're looking at the moment with the survey at 54 councillors who are borough level. There are over 200 councillors who are in our remit, because most of them, any complaints will come through to Andrew. That is a lot bigger a pool, and I think it's really important that we do push that survey out there as well. And I think that support, training, all the rest of it should be available at both levels if possible.
Can I just stop you there? Just so can we agree then that we think that the survey should be rolled out to town and parish councillors? Is everyone in agreement with that? Yeah, so that's tick. And just on your first point about the women's councillor group, is that just a case of, widening people, making sure people know about that group, or is it a suggestion that potentially there's a new group, or what's the kind of proposal?
I think you could benefit. I think it wouldn't hurt to have a local group, because one of the things that a lot of people ask about is how have you done this in other scenarios? Have you got any advice in these specific circumstances? But actually being able to then talk about slightly more specifics because people are familiar with the area or the council might actually be beneficial. It's a suggestion. It may or may not be useful. I think it's at least worth considering, and maybe it's just worth asking councillors if it's something that they would find useful or not. I've got loads more. I'll go step by step. The independent legal advice is something that was mentioned for councillors as something that would be really beneficial. Now, I know a lot of businesses provide that kind of service to employees. I don't know if the council has something like that for their staff. If they do, I wonder if it could be extended to be made available to councillors as well. Or if not, perhaps that might be something that the Borough Council could look at.
Yeah, so if I could come with, there is a employee assistance programme which certainly borough councillors can access. Now, I don't know how many councillors know that they can access that, so that's one point about raising awareness of that. And I also don't know whether it could be extended to town and parish, but that would be something we could look at.
That might be more challenging. It'd be amazing if it could. Multicoloured pencil is a bad thing. One of the key points I think actually is really worth everyone taking on board is that the recommendations include modelling the behaviour we want to see amongst councillors, officers, just in general. And that includes things like the 3 key things that were mentioned are inclusive leadership, early intervention, and calling out microaggressions. Now, a lot of that is kind of active bystanding. Obviously, though you know about the White Ribbon. White Ribbon is very much an active bystanding campaign, and I think expanding that to teach people about how to be an active bystander, how to safely and sensibly and politely call out microaggressions, but effectively, all of that helps contribute to a respectful, inclusive, supportive workplace, and particularly when you've already got potentially some quite political high feelings, shall we say. I think generating that inclusive, respectful attitude that you want to see as in every way you can should hopefully help with that as well. So I think that is the sort of thing that training is really beneficial for.
if I could just come in on that point then. I suspect that active bystander training is probably already available for staff at the council. So is that something that we could make available for councillors as well? Can we look into whether we could? Thank you.
That's where it's from. It was from Tina Chandler, who is the head of employment law at Wright Hassel. There was a survey of 2,000 staff at various businesses of various different sizes, and workplace bullying and harassment is considered currently a significant issue at all levels of business. So it's no surprise that a council of this size, or councils in general, be they parish or town or unitary authority, are going to have similar issues. So it is something that is active and current in the wild at the moment. So I don't think anyone should be ashamed to say this is a thing that we have. I think it has to be assumed to be endemic, and I think everybody can benefit from that training. So, and the one last one is this was buried in it. They recommend political training for the public because actually one of the biggest impacts on our democracy is that actually a lot of people don't really know what it involves anymore. And particularly with a lot of our immigrants from Hong Kong, for example, I've actually had a member of the Hong Kong community ask me if that was something that I could help them find. I think maybe the council might be a really good position to offer some generic introduction to what is politics at the various different levels of local government and how it impacts us. That's certainly something I'd be willing to help with if it were.
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on that, and then I'll come to Caroline.
And I think that's done.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I was going to say was just about comms around councillors, because I think there, for certain members of the public, there can be this divide between normal people and councillors or politicians. And I think, whether there could be some sort of comms just to show, we're just community representatives, we're just like normal people. And also to include on that the effect that abuse and harassment, etc., can have in terms of reducing the pool of people that will put their names forward. I mean, some of the stuff in the Joe Cox report was really clear that, a lot of MPs won't be standing at the next election, and some of them have said, it's because of the abuse and the harassment. So I don't know if, building on what you were saying, whether that could translate into some sort of comms piece, also picking up what you said about just political literacy. Something around, I'm not quite sure what it would look like, but perhaps something we could look at in terms of just trying to break down that barrier. We're just normal residents that happen to represent our communities, rather than this kind of separate breed over here that, that some people unfortunately think that, we're fair game to have a pop at. So yeah, thank you for that. Caroline.
Thank you. I was just going to ask about the training, because I presume the training will teach us, we don't put ourselves in a situation, but do we have part of the training how to actually deal with a conflict? And when somebody gets very aggressive, of how to deal with that? Is that part of our training?
Yeah, there's a whole raft of training certainly that's been directed towards officers around equality, diversity, inclusion, and I've been on some of it. It's really good. It is very practical. And I'm sure, in fact, I know that parts of that training have been offered to members as well. As Sally said, bystander training, as an example, we've got a course on that. It's very practical. So again, I think we just need to sort of bring that alive, signpost it, make it easy for you to access and your colleagues.
Okay, any other proposals from anyone? Yes, Sally?
Sorry, I've got a section on the back on training. I thought I'd covered it all. There are a couple of other suggestions specifically relating to training. One is I went on NAC training course that was a free one recently to do with not just social media use, but safe social media use. There was some really good advice in that. I think that would be hugely beneficial, particularly to new councillors, but actually to all councillors, because it's about how to protect yourself and not get, if you are in that sort of situation, how to get out of it. And the other thing that I found really weird is in one of the recommendations in the documents, it suggested that civility and equalities training should be managed by the political parties, which strikes me as bonkers. And I don't think that should be the case. I think we should be doing that. And the reason I say that are two. One of them, people are independents. So where am I going to get that from? And the other one is, do we want people like a now defunct party, the BNP, teaching people how to do what equalities means? Probably not. So I think that should be absolutely politically impartial. I think that's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Any other points? Okay, yeah, Sam.
Yeah, I think just echoing what that is, I think that's what I quite like the idea of is that when we get new residents come into our borough, I think, you know, it probably goes beyond some of the tackling abuse, intimidation, but more in terms of just engaging positively with our councillors. And because sometimes you get, oh, I don't know who my councillor is, and, you know, particularly new residents and sometimes new people coming into the area even. But it almost as like a wider point, isn't there, of maybe just the council can put comms out or some sort of ways of how to get in touch with your councillor, of just even simple things of find out who is your local councillor and comms around what they can do for you and sorts of things they can represent, you know, residents with might be a good refresher, you know, especially with the elections coming up anyway. And after that, maybe in June time, something for the council to get out widely.
Thank you. I just had a few other thoughts as well. So in the survey, I think almost half thought that written guidance was useful. I couldn't remember whether we did actually disseminate. There's an LGA guidance document about how to handle abuse. So just being clear that we should be disseminating that annually if we're not already doing that. Also, I wondered whether we said strongly enough, perhaps in the Constitution, that we as a council have a zero tolerance policy to this. There is something in there about, what does it say? That we should be able to undertake our role without being intimidated or abused, etc. But I wondered if we should propose that actually we could strengthen the wording in the council's constitution just to make it really clear that, you know, our policy is zero tolerance. What else? So I think we should share the results of our survey with the LGA, because obviously they've got a big campaign on this, so they would be interested in the results. You know, over half of our councillors surveyed so far, at least, have experienced some form of abuse. I wondered if we could contact the local police about asking them about what their threshold would be in terms of reporting, because I think probably most of us don't really know that, and the best way to do that, and perhaps some sort of dialogue with them. I mean, I could, or perhaps the chair could do that, or, you know, happy to take suggestions on how quite we do that. Then I think we should commit as well to doing the survey once a year, just so that we keep that feedback coming in. We already agreed we would roll it out more widely. Yeah, and the training we've already talked about. So are people generally in agreement with those points, those actions? Any other points that we want to raise as part of that? Oh, sure.
I think, Chair, that would be an excellent idea, not least because, as some members will know, we're going through a root and branch review of the Constitution at the moment. So we can, if we've got that recommendation specifically from Standards Committee, we can make sure that that gets picked up.
Any other points on either of these items before we move on? Okay, I think that's a useful discussion, so thank you. Okay, and then the last item, we have the annual report. Andrew, did you want to?
Again, just very briefly, Chair. So this is the draft report for members tonight to consider it. So if there's anything that you'd like to amend or add to the report, it will be published tomorrow with the council agenda for the 21st of March. So yeah, I think the report really sort of speaks for itself in terms of it's very factual in terms of what you've been doing as a committee over the last municipal year. But yeah, happy to take any comments or any amendments, additions that you'd like to see.
Sally.
I really like the report, and there was some, I don't know what it was about this one in particular, but something leapt out at me and said we should be circulating this to the towns and parishes again, because we do look after them as well in as much as anything. But there's stuff in here that I think would be of use to them. So if we could do that, and could we do that each year? That would be great. Thank you.
Everyone happy to do that? Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you. Any other comments on the report itself? Are we happy that that reflects what the committee has done over the year? Yep. Okay, Sally, yep.
The only other is not directly about the report, but came out from what was in there, which is about the independent persons. Could I ask, are we actively doing any kind of positive promotion to try and increase diversity in the pool of applicants? I know this is a thing I have harped on about before, so you're not going to be surprised about that. And can we also request that we aim to have a mixed demographics in the selection panel as much as possible? Because if nothing else, that way we are trying to make sure we're covering our unconscious biases that are inherent in there. Because I'd really like to see that we've got some diverse applicants. Could we also publicise or share or distribute what the requirements are? Because I know that there are some specific ones, and I'd like to help try and disseminate the vacancies.
Did you want to come back on that, Andrew?
Yeah, I think they're excellent suggestions there in terms of recruitment. Just a bit of information for the committee. One of the options that I've been looking at with my fellow monitoring officers across Berkshire is whether or not we could tap into the wider pool of independent persons that other local authorities use in Berkshire. So that's an option to be considered, but that doesn't negate from the fact that we probably need to run our own recruitment exercise as well, now that we've just got the one independent person at the moment. So, but I'll certainly take those points forward as well.
Okay, any other comments on the annual report? Are we all happy with that? Okay, well, that's the last item on the agenda, so we'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.